Hello, fellow readers, book lovers, and whoever else is watching this. This is Emily Midnight, and welcome to her channel.
Obviously, this is a different setting than usual, and there's new faces here.
Special guests.
Yes. We're in Taiwan, and this is my friend Emma, who inspired the Emma video on my channel.
For obvious reasons.
So I've lived in Taiwan before, and so Emma is currently living in Korea. And so she wanted to get a little tour of Taiwan. So I flew over to show her around my favorite places. And while we're here, we're doing a book vlog and travel vlog, but probably mostly book vlog. We'll probably mostly just be telling you about the books we're reading.
Probably. I mean, you could take more B-roll.
I could.
Yeah.
I could film more than I have been.
Should I harass you about that?
Maybe.
Okay.
We picked out a book that we'll be reading together.
Like
That
a
is-
buddy read thing?
Yes, a buddy read by a Taiwanese author. And then we both have a book by a Taiwanese author that we'll be reading separately.
Yes.
As well.
And then I thought that would be a fun idea because the last time I was traveling with a friend, I was reading some like really bizarre, very exciting exciting plot type books, and I would just describe to her what was happening, like after I would read a chunk. And that was really fun, just to like be traveling around as I'm telling her, like the absolute unhinged events of like some obscure thriller. So I thought it would be fun to like tell each other about.
Yeah, we're going to be telling each other about the books that we're reading, and we're going to be telling you about the books that we're reading together. The first book is Notes on a Crocodile?
Notes of a Crocodile.
Notes of a Crocodile.
Notes of a Crocodile. And how do you pronounce the author's last name?
Qiu Miaojin.
Qiu Miaojin.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, but you're listening to it and I'm reading it with my eyes.
Yes.
So
we'll have a slightly different experience.
Yeah.
So we both started it. We're at slightly different places.
Yeah, where are you now?
The main character, it like starts out with this girl and her like, is it her high school friend that they like ended up at the same college?
It sounds, it kind of, it alluded to the fact that they had known each other in high school.
And then she like avoided her because she was obsessed with her maybe?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
I think that's what's happening.
So she's just lost this friend of hers because she was like, I don't want to talk to you anymore because it's unhealthy.
Because I'm like too attached. I'm
Yes.
too attached to you.
I don't like being attached to people.
Yeah.
Her friend's gone. Yes, she goes hunting her down, run down streets, trying to find her. Couldn't find her anywhere. Only if she found her.
And I'm like, no, yes.
Yes.
And what I think is interesting is that the main character, the narrator, has openly said to the reader that she is a woman who's attracted to women.
Yes.
But it's unclear if that's kind of what's going on between her and the friend so far.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. If they're just like really close, or
And
if,
that she just has a crush on her friend or what.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit further than that. My impression so far is that it's extremely angsty.
Yes.
Like it's very angsty.
It's very angsty. So
high
far.
emotion.
Yeah.
And like very like doomsday, like life is like everything is terrible, life sucks,
Yes.
and then you die.
It feels so high school.
And so
In
yeah,
that way.
and very much
High
like,
emotion.
but like she talks like she's just very doom and gloom about like existence.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's supposed to be depicting like depression or something, to have such like unreasonable, like extreme negative reactions when like, because like she has all of these thoughts about like everything is terrible, horrible things happen to people all the time, life is suffering sort of thing, but like nothing bad is happening to her.
No.
Like, she's
her
fine.
life is super normal.
Yeah,
She's
like-
just going to school.
Yeah, but she's like so I wonder if it's just like, it's all just supposed to reflect like emotional turmoil
Yeah.
in general. But she's very dramatic.
I mean, that would
honestly
fit
same.
depression
Yeah.
because everything feels so much harder than it is when you're depressed.
That's true.
In fact, everything is so much harder than it is when you're depressed.
Yeah, we would know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, she's very dramatic and honestly same.
And her friend is like very aloof and like disconnecting from everyone.
Yes.
And-
What I thought was really interesting was that the friend was described as someone that like people frequently become obsessed with her.
Yes.
Because
yeah,
we
back
were
in high school.
because we were just talking about someone that I know who's like that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I can definitely see like this is a relatable situation
Yeah.
to like know someone who like people are easily infatuated with.
Especially
And then
to
you get
like
caught in that trap.
find yourself becoming close to that person, like how special you feel to be
Yes.
chosen by them, which is something that she mentions. Of like, oh, she spoke to me. It's going to happen now. We're going to be friends now.
So far, yeah, at first I was kind of like, this feels kind of over, like melodramatic and over the top, but like really thinking about it, she's 18 in the story.
Yeah, that's true.
She's a freshman in college.
That is the vibe.
And so it really just seems like it's very like intensely emotional reflections on her experiences. And I think that actually does seem realistic to me.
Yeah.
As someone who was
I was once 18.
I was once a highly emotional, dramatic 18-year-old. I think that makes sense, actually. Also, the book, I feel like, is very, it's descriptive, but like with an attitude, kind of.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
It's lush descriptions, but like with that kind of like angsty, like grittiness to it.
My favorite moment so far is like when they're on the bus, heading home from like school or somewhere, and she's like describing the scenery around her, being like, wow, and like the sun hit the cars in this like beautiful way. All the cars around us in the alley was like lit up with light. And I like looked over to my friend and was like, wow, are you seeing this? And she was like, yeah. I loved that. It was just so dismissive and just totally crushed the mood.
Yeah.
So that's where we are in Notes on a Crocodile.
Very beginning, like 20% in, I think.
Yeah, very early. And while we're here, we can give you a beautiful tour of this random park that we sat down in. That is so pretty.
Show the people what they want.
Yes. So this is the Indigenous Peoples Park. So this is up in northern Taipei, and you can see each one of these statues represents one of the Aboriginal tribes here in Taiwan. So that is very nifty. And we just have this like beautiful little pavilion to sit in. Say hello, it's all my stuff. And over there, you can't see it, but through there, on this tree hillside, right through there, is the National Palace Museum. We just went there and got done looking at things, and I might throw in some pictures that I took. So, we were going to film this update yesterday, but we did not.
No, because I fell asleep on the bus.
Yeah, that's true. She did not get to halfway at the same time that I got to halfway.
Yeah, I fell asleep, and then while I was sleeping, you surpassed me. You raced past me.
For the first time.
Yeah.
Emma's been ahead of me this whole time.
Yeah.
And then we were going to film it today on the bus again. But then I fell asleep. So,
Yeah.
alas.
So now here we are in our shipping container themed hotel. Woo! I guess.
This is what you get.
So do you have any thoughts about the second quarter of the novel?
Yes, I have thoughts.
Please give us your opening thoughts.
Opening thoughts. Oh, wait, hold up. Let's reference the notes.
I was just thinking that I should have taken notes.
They are barely notes. The first notes, the very first most important notes are character names. So the main character is not named. The person we've been referring to as the friend is Shuelin.
And they were dating.
The friend.
We were mistaken in our first discussion. They were dating.
Yes, we can't call her the friend. We have to call her Shuelin.
Yes.
Because they are, in fact, dating.
Yes.
It was a very odd sort of dating where, I mean, not that weird, but they were just like not physical and not intimate.
As far as we know, as far as it described.
Yeah, I mean, there was a moment where she like hugged her and like kissed her eyeball, and she described that whole experience very viscerally.
Yeah, in like a very intimate way.
Which made me think that like that was a sort of first time thing. And that was very close to the time that she broke things off with her.
Yes. Also, multiple other characters have been introduced.
Yes.
And it took me a while to figure out, oh, they're all gay.
Are Chun Chun and Churro gay?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't gotten that vibe necessarily.
I only know because I went back and I read the Goodreads description of the book. And it was like, follow the misadventures of all of these queer misfits, so-and-so and so-and-so, 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 so-and-so and so-and-so. And I was like, okay. Because that makes sense. Because my understanding was, I thought that the main character and this girl were just friends, but then we figured out, oh wait, no, they're dating.
I thought it was just by panic.
Yeah.
Not
I was like, oh no,
dating.
I'm in love with my best friend. But no, it was a mutual thing.
Yeah.
And then with these two other friends, I was like, they're not going to trick me again. It's the same thing.
Yeah, so that's Churro and Chun,
Yes.
who are new freshmen. We are so out of order here.
Yes. And also, I think it would be good. We don't want to like summarize the whole thing because they should read it for themselves.
That's good.
So we should like talk about like the ideas and like what we're thinking about it.
That's a good point.
So what have been your thoughts about the things that have been going on that have like struck you?
Well, I mean, prior to striking thoughts, there were confusing thoughts.
Yes.
Such as, who is 𝐿𝐴𝐻? And is the narrator who's interacting with 𝐿𝐴𝐻 even the same narrator that is interacting with Shuilin?
And it is.
It is.
Yeah.
It's happening like a year later, maybe 2.
It was my understanding that she met him when she was still having her situation with Shuilin.
Okay, yeah. So 𝐿𝐴𝐻 shows up, and he's kind of a jerk.
He's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just scary vibes. Like, he says he's going to beat her up if she doesn't show up to something. Whole bunch of things.
And then he beats up the other guy.
Yes, one of her friends. She has a lab mate friend whose name is Chu Kwang. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget.
So just lots of angst and violence. Not like graphic violence, but like lots of angst and dysfunction.
Yes, dysfunction is a great way to put it because it is definitely like people who do not know how to handle their feelings even in the slightest.
Yes.
And especially for the men, it often turns
into violence.
Into violence.
Yes.
Which happens a lot in the world. I feel like that is a very common theme and effective to bring out in this way. That especially men, with the way they're masculinized, societalized,
Socialized.
Thank you. Socialized to be masculine. It means that their dysfunction, rather than being internal, is often external in dangerous ways.
Yeah. But then we can also see that the main character, who is a lesbian, all of her dysfunction is internal, which is why she's so like emotionally toxic towards other people.
Yes. Oh, and that was really interesting. It was really interesting to read her introspection. And she's finally starting to emotionally mature, I feel like, at this point in the book.
You can see her growth as a young person.
She's starting to be able to process what she's been doing. And she's thinking about the ways that she's been so afraid of her like romantic feelings because they go outside of like expectations and norms, that she's been pushing everyone away before they can reject her because she feels that everyone is going to reject her.
Which I think is that is a feeling that transcends sexuality. Like it just has to do with like
a fear of rejection.
Yeah, fears of rejection, fears of commitment, fears of like big feelings, things like that.
Yeah, fears of people not accepting you for who you are.
Yeah, that too. And I think that can happen to any kind of person.
Yep.
So what struck me the most was when she was with the two male characters and talking about sexuality, and she talked about how when you have your first like homosexual encounter, and like that moment kind of like breaks your entire reality because you've gone past what you were always taught was reality of like a heterosexual relationship and heterosexual interactions, and to then go beyond that, you kind of like shatter your previous reality and like create a new one, and how that can be like both terrifying and also like liberating. It was my understanding of how she talked about that.
Yeah, which I feel, again, is very applicable to the rest of our lives, like beyond sexuality. I feel like there's a moment in most people's new adult life that, I mean, it can be big and small, right? Like a moment where you break past the things that you've already done, and suddenly the world looks so different. And that can be in like a terrifying way, and it can be in a really empowering way, and it can be both.
Well, my interpretation of how she talked about it in that scene was that like it felt very fearful to me of like like
very different
of like
side of the same coin.
coming to the brink and having to like shatter your own reality and to like go into something like an area that's extremely taboo. That's like that experience. And I thought that was really powerful. Like it was something that I'd never seen it phrased that way. I'd never seen that that aspect of sexuality to like really be explained like that. Of like the moment when you actually like have your first experience, like changes like your reality. And
you're like, you can't go back to how things were before.
Yeah.
The world already looks completely different.
Yeah, so I thought
and like
that
you don't know how to interact with this new world.
So what have you thought about all the Crocodile chapters?
Oh, yeah, that's been really interesting. I think I was misinterpreting them at first. We kind of talked about this.
Yes, because you looked up what was going on in 1988. Is that when this is taking place?
Yeah. She mentions 1988 as the year that she's with Shirley. And so I was like looking up what was going on in Taiwan in 1988 because I was like, maybe there's some connection here. And that was when the Taiwanese government changed the law such that you could change the gender on your identification card, but like not super functionally. Like there were still a lot of barriers. I think you had to do like a full surgical transition and stuff, and like it wasn't really very. Like, most people weren't actually able to use that function of the new law, as happens.
But it was still like a pivotal point
It was a pivotal
in like
moment.
LGBT history.
But another
Taiwan.
thing that happened that year I learned later was there was a really prominent man who was fighting for gay rights with him and his spouse.
Okay.
Well,
Partner.
because they were not legally married. And so that is actually what was going on in that year that this is referencing.
Okay. But yeah, and so the first we were thinking it was a metaphor for being transgender.
Yeah.
But now we know that it's like Taiwanese slang for being a lesbian.
Yes. Yeah, because there's a character, is it Chun Chun or Juro? One of those girls refers to the main character as ladzi, which means to like pole, and it also means crocodile in slang. And it's like a self-referential term for lesbians.
Yeah. And so then I was like, oh, so, because I thought that the transgender thing made so much sense of like, oh, that there's so much that really lines up with that.
Because of the crocodile chapters.
Because the crocodile chapters, like...
It was all about like not wanting people to know what you are underneath.
Yeah. Well, and to be like, what you present to the outside world should be like what people accept. And then it was also interesting to be like, when it was first announced that we were protecting crocodiles, there were so many responses like, I didn't know we had crocodiles in Taiwan. And things like that. And like, where are the crocodiles? What do they eat? What do they do?
Like?
Yeah. Like,
what are crocodiles like?
And I thought that was really interesting. I could really see, I mean, that can also be applied to like the queer community in general, but also like with transgender people, it was a lot about like self-presentation, and like perceptions and things like that. But then,
when we discovered that was not what it was about.
That was not the case, but I still feel like there's a lot of overlap there because the main character was talking to the two guys about like how she wants to create, she wants there to be like a world without like gender barriers.
Yeah, like and gender expectations and
like a genderless world kind of. I can't remember exactly what she said.
Yeah.
So.
Which is interesting because like as gendered as Western society is, Eastern society also has like a heavily gendered concept with like energy, because there's the yin and yang, right?
Yeah.
The yin energy, I think, is the masculine, and the yang energy is the feminine. And like there's a lot of emphasis on the like yin energy versus the yang energy and the ways that they have to interplay.
Yeah.
And like the way that the yin and the yang like interplay in yourself and making sure that that balance is correct in like society, like correct in societal expectations. And so there's like a lot of gender-based expectations in Eastern society that are kind of at war within this character for obvious reasons. She talks a lot about like how she feels like, you know, her feminine energy is like really strong in this moment, and that's like, I don't remember what she was saying about that.
I did remember her talking about like her femininity.
Yeah.
But then also her desire to break down gender barriers.
Yeah.
But I also thought that like that discussion of like sexuality versus gender and like homosexual, like her talking about this homosexual desire also inspiring a desire to like break down gender barriers, I thought also was a really interesting way of showing how important it is to connect transgender people and the transgender experience to like the LGBT community as a whole. Because I know that there's kind of I don't know how like niche of a movement it is, but I know that like there is a certain subset of people who are like trans exclusionary, like queer activists. Yeah. Of like only LGB. And that sort of thing. And I think that the way that the main character discusses gender and sexuality really contributed to the idea that those two things are part of the same discussion.
Yeah. She was, very much showing how gender expectations limit and kind of hold back all people, including like, you know, like lesbians feeling like they need to put on that feminine energy and like they can't be attracted to the feminine energy, and the way that like, you know, gay men feel the same pressure but for the masculine, and like how that can often like she talks a lot about how the masculine energy affects 𝐿𝐸 and Qiu Kuang, the two queer men in her life, and how like their dysfunction, you know, like we said, comes out in very like violent ways, and basically just how those like gendered expectations of how we behave with the world and behave with our emotions can be harmful to everyone involved.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting things are happening. It's really fun to see not only the main character sort of mature as time goes on, but also to have new characters introduced that are now starting to get sort of interconnected. At first it was like really random strings, felt very disconnected, but now it's all starting to sort of come together as the different people in her life are all sort of converging. Like at first we did not know that 𝐸𝐸 and Qiu Kuang knew each other. They were just two different people in her life that she was telling us about.
Yeah.
But then we learned about all of their history together.
Yeah. So I also consider this book, I was thinking about this, how I needed to bring this up. Just for people who are thinking about whether or not they want to read this. This is the kind of book that I describe usually as all thoughts, no plot.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
very
just
character driven.
It's
well,
but not even quite that, because like the characters aren't really doing anything.
It is the main character's thoughts and life driven, not necessarily plot driven. She's bringing you along for a period in her life. Slice of lifestyle almost, but longer.
Except it's barely even slice of life, because she doesn't even really describe like what her life is like, or like what her day-to-day is like, or like the things that are happening. It's really just like these conversations and these like commentaries and thoughts that she's having. And so it's all ideas. No
along
action.
as she processes life.
Yeah.
As she thinks back on different experiences that she's had.
And it's
fascinating.
The different sections are called like Notebook 1, Notebook 2, Notebook 3.
Yeah.
And I think it's supposed to be like a journal, and it really does feel like a journal of just like random thoughts that she's thinking about as she provides a little bit of context of like who she's talking to.
This just reminded me, it is so fun to be reading this book in Taiwan, because like it is super interesting to be reading a book about the country that you're in, but it is also so cool to be reading this book here.
Yeah.
Because she's talking about like, as I rode the bus to this specific bus to when I lived in this specific district. And I'm like listening to it on a bus in Taipei, like literally 20 minutes from where she was writing this.
Yeah.
Like it is so cool.
Yeah.
It's been a good time.
So,
yeah,
I'm less familiar with the area to know what areas it's talking about, but I'll be like, man, I know buses in Taiwan.
Yeah, I lived in this city specifically for a month. And so it was a good time to be like, I've heard of that bus. Maybe I rode it last year when I was living here.
So, yeah, so far it's been really interesting to think about.
It's been a good time. So we are halfway through the book.
50% in.
And we will update you again.
Just whenever we feel like.
We'll decide.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, but we will show you where we went today. So here is some footage, some random little vlogging videos that I took in Jiufen today, the city that inspired Spirited Away.
Maybe.
Roll footage. The city rumored to have inspired Spirited Away.
Yeah.
Welcome back. We are back. Our neighbors are not back.
Unless they are like super back.
Maybe they're super back.
That's them coming back.
Yeah. We're all back. Everyone's back. We're so back. We finished Notes on a Crocodile, of a Crocodile. Because it is the crocodile who's writing.
Notes of a Crocodile.
It is the notes.
Yes. I thought that the first half had a lot of good thoughts. We talked about.
Yeah.
Lots of good thoughts. Not much of a plot. All thoughts, no plot.
Yeah, not much going on.
But I thought that the third quarter was much better and more enlightening and more interesting and engaging to read than the first half.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were starting to see, the last time we talked, that she was starting to have just a little morsel of introspection. And that just continued to be true, that she had a lot more introspection. And her having introspection, since the entire thing is just her thoughts, way more interesting to read.
Yes. And at one
Because then
point,
we understood what was going on.
exactly. And at one point she actually had like a letter of her explaining her exact thoughts and feelings while going through a certain event in the book. And it was explained, like she talked so much about like heartbreak and isolation and like alienation in a way that I thought was so powerful. And while she obviously talked about a really specific experience of being queer in 1980s Taiwan, there was just a lot of things that she said about some of those experiences that I could also really relate to. Like the way that she talked about heartbreak especially was like so like huge and real and human, and I really liked it.
She explained the thought of like realizing that a relationship was ending really well as well.
And like officially, like what it really means to like actually let go.
Yeah. Yeah, so she explained a lot of thoughts really well, which was cool. That letter that you mentioned, though, was really confusing to me because something we talked about is a lot of how she'd been describing 𝐒𝐴lin, which is the love interest,
the first love
half.
interest. Yes.
Yeah. A lot of how she'd been describing 𝐒𝐴lin was actually very much like a projection of herself, perhaps, because it seemed to be each time she said 𝐒𝐴lin was something, it was more true of herself.
Like she would say 𝐒𝐴lin is like this, and then she herself would do that thing, and 𝐒𝐴lin would be doing the opposite of that.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and so that letter was really confusing to me because she was like writing to 𝐒𝐴lin, but it was just like, I feel this as we did this, my family this. And like, you know, she was like, 𝐒𝐴lin had this rocky relationship with her family, but then like that was actually true of herself as well. And so then when that like came up in the letter, I was like, oh wait, is this 𝐒𝐴lin writing? And I had to like go back and see who was writing it. And like, I read it like 3 times to figure out who, because everything that she described about 𝐒𝐴lin was actually very true of herself.
Yeah.
And so that was very interesting.
A lot of really interesting, like through working through that relationship, we also learned a lot more about her as a character.
Yeah, which was fun.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. What did you think about the other characters in the second half of the story, of the book?
A lot of the other characters kind of seem to drop off.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's the last fourth.
Yeah, so in the third quarter.
Third quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, the third quarter, it was really fun to see her friends, Juro and Twin Twin. We get confirmation that they were, in fact, in a relationship, and kind of like how that devolved. Just seeing the main character kind of negotiate a friendship with both of them.
Separately, which
Separately.
I thought was so interesting. But like in a very natural way.
Yes, yeah. She had a very different friendship with both of them, and she was able to maintain that friendship. I don't know, it was a very nice portrayal of friendship, of like how you can appreciate people independently, even if like the friend group kind of falls apart.
Yeah. I also thought that by talking about those 2 women, we were able to get a wider picture of the variation in sexuality that people can experience.
Yes.
Because all of these women are having such wildly different experiences of being queer. And I thought that was really enlightening and really helpful. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, what did you think about the next relationship? That 𝐒𝐴l𝐚, that's the name that we have for the main character. It's not actually her name.
Yeah, it's her nickname. So she is involved with an older woman.
I mean, she's like 26. She's like,
scandal.
It's like a 23-year-old and a 26-year-old. It's not like that big of an age gap.
So she's involved with this other woman who is engaged to a man, and they're kind of obsessed with each other, but then they kind of just ignore each other. And they live together.
They're roommates. They become roommates because they're interested in each other.
But then they also just kind of, they have like a very short, passionate relationship that also burns out very quickly, and then they just kind of ignore each other.
While still being roommates.
Yes.
Which feels incredibly overwhelming to me.
And like the way, and this really impacted the way that I kind of reviewed the book as a whole, but I thought that the way that they interacted was very confusing, and a lot of the choices that 𝐒𝐴l𝐚 was making when it came to that relationship were very confusing, but at the very, very end of that relationship is when 𝐒𝐴l𝐚 explained, oh, you were doing this and that made me feel this, and so then I decided to respond in this way and do these things and da-da-da-da, and she like explained all of like what was happening and how she was feeling and why during the relationship. And I was like, well, if I had known that earlier, then I would have understood what was going on. Which maybe is the point, but I didn't love it because then it was like, well, I got very little out of it while it was happening, being like, I don't know why they're being like this. And then at the very end, they're like, by the way, it was all because of this.
Yeah, it was very hard to parse what was actually happening.
Yeah.
Because, like, it was clear that she was still in contact with her fiancé, but, like, to what extent were they still in a relationship? That was not really portrayed to the reader.
It was all...
until, like, the very end of the relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that part of it, I guess, ultimately did work pretty well for me, but it was confusing at the time. It worked because that when she realizes just how involved this other woman is, whose name has escaped me.
Jiufen?
Oh, Xiaofan.
Yeah.
Yeah. How involved Xiaofan is with her fiancé, and that they are, in fact, still very deeply in a relationship, and it's not just kind of something that fizzled out. Like, it hits her all at once. And so the fact that, like, that isn't really shown, she's kind of ignoring it, and then it's like, boom, all at once, okay, this isn't gonna work. Like, I understood that, but it did make me confused leading up to that.
Yes. So, there was that. And then, so then that ends, and then she kind of wraps things up with her two male friends, who have gone in very different directions.
Yes.
And then the book ends.
Yep. Just ends.
Yep. Which I was kind of expecting, because all plot's no plot, and so... But I feel like it wasn't like there was no resolution to the book, because she kind of had like a talk with one of her friends about like everything. Like, it kind of seems like what she has learned through this period in her life is to like love fully and courageously.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really interesting conclusion to take from everything that had happened.
Yeah, because, yeah, it was very interesting because, like, especially with Xiaofan, it seemed like it was like what you would consider to be like the opposite of like cowardly love. You know, she just dived full in. She was like, all right, I'm obsessed with this person. I am all in. But then, like, as she's talking to Meng Sheng about this concept of like loving courageously, it kind of becomes clear that she's realized that like by being in a relationship with someone that couldn't fully be in a relationship with her, that had been the cowardly option.
Yeah.
And so she, like, you're kind of left with this resolution feeling of, like, she's going to find someone who she can actually love. I think she even says that, who she can actually love fully and who can love her fully. Yeah. Which is a great note to end on.
And I think that kind of marks, like, her actual, like, coming of age at the end of it. Of, like, she has made she's gone through all these difficult things and these hard relationships, this dysfunction, a lot of, like, self-loathing and shame. And then she, like, learns from that and realizes what she needs to do differently in the future, which I thought was, like, very touching.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So
I liked it.
Yeah. And it was done. What would you rate this book?
I'm going back and forth because talking about it now, I'm like, oh, yeah, I really did like it. But earlier, right after I finished it, I was like, oh, 3 stars. Like, just good enough. But...
What made you think that at first?
Okay, so I have this thing where... Sorry, the battery died. I have this thing where I want more than the author is going to give me in this setting.
Yeah.
Because I want to be in there, you know? I want to be in the feelings as things are happening, and that is not how it happens. It's very much like hindsight, kind of processing things. I mean, it's in the format of journal entries, but I was disappointed that, like, as things were happening, I feel like I wasn't in the dirt with her, and I really love that aspect. Yeah, we were talking about this. I love either, like, to be really deep into a specific time of someone's life and be, like, really, really in it with them and feeling everything that they're feeling. Or I want a more broad scope of their life, just with, like, more context, which we didn't necessarily get.
And more of like what's going on with her family, what's happening with all these other people, and what's going on further with their lives.
Yeah, but it was like broad and tight in scope at the same time. And we weren't down in it, we were in what she thought about things afterwards. There were a couple times that we really got her thoughts in the moment because they were really poignant moments, and I feel like that is kind of how retelling things in the past works. You either give, like, paint with a really broad brush, or you hone in really tight on, like, these are the things that I was feeling and I was traumatized. Or I was ecstatic. And so I just felt that I wanted more from the author than the book was set up to give me. But I think ultimately when I do view it in what was it trying to achieve and how well did it achieve it, I think, it's 4 stars worthy, I think. Okay,
yes. Me. I also agree that it was 4 stars. And I also thought that initially, because it sounds like for you, it's not your style of book. It's not like your thing.
It's a little bit different than I would pick normally.
And I would also agree that it's not really like my thing. I also really like kind of more absorbing stories. Yeah. But I can really appreciate what the author was doing, and I think that she accomplished that. Yeah. I think that she was able to successfully like capture a certain time in this person's life and like the various influences on how they had certain realizations about their identity and how they, what kind of person they wanted to be. For me, the reason why it's 4 stars instead of 5 is those moments of confusion. Yeah. Some of which I think were on purpose, that it was supposed to be kind of ambiguous and we were supposed to be figuring things out for ourselves, which I can appreciate if that's what the author's trying to do. It's just not my style. But if that was the only confusing, if those are the only kinds of confusing moments, then I'd probably still give it 5 stars because like the author is doing what they intended to do and they are being successful at it, and I'm supposed to be confused and figuring it out for myself. But there were also a lot of moments when I don't think it was supposed to be confusing. Like and I do wonder if part of this was a translation problem, because there were a lot of issues in certain parts of the book where, like you said, when you're like, is this letter being written by Laza or Shui Ling? Like, I have to go back and figure out. There were also a lot of points in that where there'd be like a whole paragraph. There's like 3 people having a conversation, and at the end of a paragraph, it says, and he did this to him. And I was like, wait, it just says he and him. Like, which one? There's 2 men in this exchange. Yeah. And then I have to like go back through the paragraph and like trace through all of the different subjects and be like, who is this? And that sort of thing. And try and like match what fits which person's character when you're still getting to know their characters. It's kind of hard to parse. And that clearly seems to me like a translations issue. That just like really took me out of it. But not even that sort of grammatical issue. There were also just lots of moments where a character would do something that like seemed to completely contradict what it had been established that character was supposed to be doing or was supposed to be thinking. Yeah. And that happens so often that it just like really took me out of it to be like, wait, what is this? What is supposed to be happening with this then? Like what is the author trying to do? It's one thing to have a character be projecting like everything they think about themselves and everything that they do onto another person intentionally. Like you can totally do that, but it has to be really on the nose. And I feel like there were a lot of times where it was like, in order to parse what was happening, we just had to make that assumption. Yeah. I had to make a lot of assumptions about... It wasn't as clear. About people's motivations and intentions. But I wasn't positive if they were correct. Yes. If those assumptions were correct. And if that was actually what the author wanted me to know. Right. So that was frustrating. And you can have that sort of thing. Again, you can have times where you need to like make assumptions and like come to your own conclusions about things, but not about like the basic plot. Yeah. But overall, I thought that it was beautifully written. Yes. I thought that the chapters about the crocodiles that are going around in society as crocodiles in human suits, it made me think a lot. Even though I didn't 100% understand what the whole allegory was supposed to be, it made me think a lot. And I enjoyed that. I about half got those. Like, every other one was like super clear and like really profound. Like when an alligator event was just a corporate... The alligator club, the crocodile club? The crocodile club was just hosted by a corporation to sell stuff to crocodiles. Like that was really on the nose, really spot on, like made me laugh. Very perfect. And then there were other times like, I'm not sure why she's hiding out. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with the alligators or crocodiles. About half the time it was like really, really great. And the other half I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but like, it's working. Yeah, so I thought those made me think. I thought there was some really beautiful language. And I thought that there was an interesting balance between like things where I absolutely understood and things that had to make me think, even though some of that balance didn't work for me. I thought that a lot of the observations about the human experience and growing up were really poignant and I really enjoyed. And so I think this would be good for people who enjoy kind of philosophical conversations. I also think if you like queer literature, this one's for you. It's a fun experience. Yeah. It might not be for everyone with how it's written. I think it was good enough, you know? Like, I think it wasn't my perfect cup of tea, but
I enjoyed it.
I think that, yeah, it's good if you like slow, thoughtful, meandering sort of stories.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it.
And pretty writing. All right, up next, we will each be reading separate Taiwanese books. So we picked one to read together, and we picked one to read each on our own, and we will be just telling each other about them.
Yes.
Emma has already started hers.
Yep.
I'm about to start mine. What book are you reading?
I am reading Bestiary by K-Ming Chang. So I've been ranting a little bit about it.
Yeah.
I'm 25% in because we were on the train for like 3 hours today.
Yeah, lots of trains today.
And so I did lots of reading on the train while you were finishing Notes of a Crocodile.
Yep.
And I just like to set the scene.
Set the scene.
Okay? So this is the description that I read where I was like, this sounds really cool. I want to read this.
I'm excited to hear this because I know other thoughts of yours.
Yeah. 3 generations of Taiwanese American women are haunted by the myths of their homeland in this spellbinding, visceral debut about one family's queer desires, violent impulses, and buried secrets. So already I'm like, ooh.
There's a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on.
There are a lot of things happening.
But I like all of them. One evening, mother tells daughter a story about a tiger spirit who lived in a woman's body. She was called 𝐒𝐥 𝐌𝐞𝐝𝐢𝐚, and she hungered to eat children, especially their toes. Soon afterwards, daughter awakes with a tiger tail, and more mysterious events follow. Holes in the backyard spit up letters penned by her grandmother. A visiting aunt arrives with snakes in her belly. Daughter... You have to accept this, okay?
I'm sorry.
A brother tests the possibility of flight. All the while, daughter is falling for Ben, a neighborhood girl with strange powers of her own. As the 2 young lovers translate the grandmother's letters, daughter begins to understand that each woman in her family embodies a myth, and that she will have to bring her family's secrets to light in order to change their destiny. With a poetic voice of crackling electricity, K-Ming Chang is an explosive young writer who combines the wit and fabulism of Helen Oyeyemi with the subversive storytelling of Maxine Hong Kingston.
Now I want to read those 2 authors.
Now we have homework. Tracing one family's history from Taiwan to America, from Arkansas to California, Bestiary is a novel of migration, queer lineages, and girlhood. So I read this description and I was like, ooh.
It sounds amazing.
It sounds great. There's a lot going on. I like things that are explosive and electric and spellbinding. And then also it's clearly magical realism. And I love magical realism. One of my favorite books that I read in high school, like for high school English, was 100 Years of Solitude. And this sounded very similar to 100 Years of Solitude, of like multiple generations of a family, like experiencing strange, slightly magical phenomenon. And I loved the idea of like each woman embodying a myth. I thought that sounded really cool. But I missed how important a certain word in this description was, which is visceral. And I got a little bit of a warning from a review on Goodreads. It's the second one down for me, by Shinju. Do you think that's how you say that person's name?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Shinju, who starts out their review by saying content warnings: cannibalism, animal abuse, animal killing, child abuse, miscarriage, suicide, blood, poison, gore, bestiality, PTSD, gunshot, on-page amputation. So I did read that before starting the book, and I was like, okay, I'm still down for this. Like,
it does seem intense.
It does seem intense, but I like new things. I don't mind any of those things individually a lot. All of them seems like a lot. But I still want to know what happens. And it does sound like an exciting time. So I want to see where this goes. And my main problem so far is just that it is doing all those things. It is showing us these multiple generations of women, and it is establishing different Chinese myths in their lives. And it is some very beautiful poetic language that's like very descriptive and visual, but there are just so many bodily fluids all the time, constantly. And it's just a bit much for me. Like, there are a lot of actual bodily fluids happening in the story. But then, which is one thing, but then also all of the metaphors and like visual descriptions are likening things to bodily fluids. And I'm telling you, like, all the bodily fluids. Like, fluids that I have, like, don't even really think about all the time. So many fluids. I didn't think I was a squeamish person until I started reading this book. I guess I'll just have to update you further in on how much the fluids impact
The experience.
my experience of the novel.
We'll see.
We'll
see. So that's Emma's riveting tale.
Yeah.
I will be reading Ghost Town by Kevin Chen, which sounds very cool. I don't know if we should read the whole description, but...
dramatically read it to us.
All right. Kevin Tianhong, the only and desperately yearned for son of a traditional Taiwanese family with 7 daughters, runs away from the oppression of his village to Berlin in the hope of finding acceptance as a young gay man. The novel begins a decade later when Chen has just been released from prison for killing his boyfriend. He is about to return to his family's village, a poor and desolate place. With his parents gone, his sisters married, mad or dead, there is nothing left for him there. As the story unfurls, we learn what tore his family apart and, more importantly, the truth behind the murder of Chen's boyfriend. Told in a myriad of voices, both living and dead, which I think is an interesting concept here.
It is called Ghost Town.
And moving through time with deceptive ease, Ghost Town weaves a mesmerizing web of family secrets and countryside superstitions in search for identity and clash of cultures.
Okay, so...
I'm really excited for countryside superstitions and, you know, the voices of the dead narrating, perhaps. Also, just this crazy premise.
Is it, but, so is it a memoir?
No, because Chen Tianhong is the character, and this is, Kevin Chen, it could be him.
And then it says, the novel begins a decade later when Chen has just been released. So it is a novel. It describes itself as a novel.
It describes itself as a novel.
I think I've heard that this is kind of a thing in, like, postmodern style literature, where self-insertion of the author is a big thing in postmodern literature. I only know this because I read A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki, and that is also a kind of fantastical novel where someone with the author's name and life is also a character in the story. Is like a main character. And so I think that's perhaps what it's doing.
I'm so curious now. So we'll see. Maybe he's the main character, maybe he's not. But it's a wild premise. So we'll let you know how it goes.
May you have less fluids. Saliva. She licks the sweat off the other girl's skin, which is like 2 fluids, you know, that's two for 1. Both pooping and shitting, and that's called range. Lots of bone marrow, which is kind of interesting. Vomit with blood in it. Bird shit, cow shit, more piss. Boogers. There's so much piss in this book. There's just so much piss.
All right, welcome back. We are now at Guang Shan in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. Yes. Filming outside, so please enjoy our bird neighbors.
Very musical.
I am almost halfway through with Ghost Town by Kevin Chen.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've been having like a way better time.
Way better time than you've been having.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm very much enjoying my book. So it mentioned that it had different narrators, living and dead, which has been true, which is very fun. It is very like jumpy with the timeline, where it will kind of like be when he's younger, and then it'll be when he's come back to Taiwan and he's thinking about when he's younger, and then it will be in one of his sister's current timeline life, or one of his other sisters' young life time. And that has worked really well for me. Also his dead dad.
Like as a dead person, or like
as a dead
back
person.
when he was alive?
He's a memory ghost.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's fun. So I'm enjoying that actually, because the way that it's tied together is very like train of thought in a good way. Like you see him come back to his town of Yongjing, and he's remembering something that happened when he was younger, and then you'll be in that moment. And so it's very like a grounded and in the people and their feelings and their thoughts, which I really, really like. That was my complaint from the last book.
That's right. Yeah,
you said that I didn't feel like I was in.
You want to be in it with their feelings and their experiences.
And you were in so many people's feelings and experiences. It's also very interesting because there's a lot of like secrets, a lot of intrigue, where you don't know exactly what they're referring to. They're like, oh, that fateful day, or when this happened. And they haven't told me the things yet, but because of the way that they've been like, you know, going back and telling me a little bit more about the boy in the red shorts, like we're getting these little pieces here and there. And so there's very much a promise that it's all going to come out. You know, I'm going to be able to understand it all as a reader. And so that works really well for me.
It sounds like it's setting up to be very like satisfying.
Yes.
Okay.
That is what I feel so far.
Okay.
Hopefully it is exactly how it plays out.
That does sound, that sounds very fun.
Yeah.
I mean, you've convinced me.
I'm having a good time.
I
Yeah.
definitely want to read it so that I can talk about it with you.
Yeah.
And I love
'cause it's a good time.
multiple perspectives.
Yes.
And I do, when it's done well, I do really love going back and forth in time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it can be done really poorly. And I don't think that that is my experience with this so far, which is great.
Okay.
Oh, the secrets are not what I expected them to be so far. I mean,
Unexpected secrets.
yeah, like the things that I don't know aren't the thing. I thought that I would not know things that I do know. And the things that I don't know, I didn't know were to be known.
Okay. Good to know.
I might want to cut that part out. That doesn't make any sense. Makes it sound more mysterious than it is. Please update me on what's going on with your book. We've seen some good fluids from you, but what else is there?
So I think I'd say it's still, I'm now, let's see, how far am I now? I'm about 50% in.
Okay.
And I would say there is some super beautiful language that I really appreciate. A lot of it is like very, very like poetry. Like not just poetic, like it feels like it reads like poetry, which I think is very powerful. It is very imaginative. I do love like the folktale element to it, but it is so consistently gross so that just like pulls me out of it every time. So I thought I would read like a pivotal, like a very
Yes.
a passage that really exemplifies what this experience has been like for me.
Read anything.
And so this is from kind of the middle. I'm just going to read the beginning of this, where it's a letter from the grandmother that says, "Dear eldest, now that you are dead, you can see why I never wanted you to live. See how much lighter you are now, barren of a body, mother to nothing? You darkest of my daughters in skin and smoke, I burned you. This ash is yours. Rebuild it into anything you want me to be. This letter is not apology. I am not writing for a response. A bullet doesn't ask to be given back. My second husband, the soldier, lives by the law of loss. Kill what you cannot carry, marry what you cannot bury. Writing will ring lies from the white, open a gate to our griefs. I have no need to grieve what I named. I'm here shitting my pants." The Zhongyi says, "Sphincter loose as a sleeve. Says it's because of my age. I suspect it's your father, the first man I married for his soldier's pension for a future the color of tendon." But just, you know, just when I start to get into it and be like, man, the rhythm of this writing, like the imagery, like the emotion is so great, then suddenly there is shit. And it happens so consistently, like so consistently. And I know that the author is clearly doing this for a reason. Like she's not just going for shock value. I think the shock value has a purpose. It's trying to keep us in this discomfort for a reason. All of the women in this family have gone through deeply distressing and uncomfortable things. And so it wants us to be just as uncomfortable as they are, which I understand. It's just not my thing. I think it's just not for me.
The way that they're making you uncomfortable.
Yeah, I just don't know why I have to be uncomfortable by thinking about piss and shit all the time.
And boogers.
And boogers, but it just pulls me out every time. Like I'll get into the rhythm and then I'm back out of it again. But like clearly the author is accomplishing something. Like she's getting a reaction out of me.
Yeah.
And she's making me feel things.
That might be the exact reaction she's looking for.
Exactly. Like I would like to read like some interviews with her to see like kind of what she's going for. So I would say this book still has a lot of merit. It's definitely saying a lot of radical things about like the human experience.
And human fluids.
It really, yeah, but it really like it gets down into the muck, literally, you know?
Yeah.
Of just what it is to be a suffering human being, just wallowing in the gore. And so I can definitely see what the author is trying to do. I just don't love it.
Yeah.
It's just not generally
not your vibe.
I love learning about the difficulties of other people and like what they've gone through and things that I haven't gone through and empathizing with that. And just being grossed out all the time gets kind of exhausting after a while.
Yeah, it's interesting because like visceral language as you said, has a very real purpose to make people feel uncomfortable and or just feel very like how visceral the feelings that the characters are feeling are.
Visceral language makes people feel visceral.
It makes them feel visceral. I feel visceral right now. No, I mean, you feel how like gory the experience is, you know. You're in the mud with them, as you said. But there's a certain level of it that is my zone. And so I totally understand it being beyond that zone.
It's beyond my zone, yeah.
Yeah, the book that I'm reading is in my zone because there are some like very visceral descriptions occasionally when it like really makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's not every sentence in the middle of the poetry.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking about, is that this could potentially be a critique of, I think that just feeling grossed out all the time kind of diminishes the power of some of that language, of like after a while it just becomes like a slog for me, of just like, oh, more gross language.
It doesn't
but
carry
like
the same
if it
weight
was
anymore.
Yeah, if it was every once in a while, I think it would really pack a punch.
Yeah.
But instead it's just kind of this like repetitive, disgusting slog of being like, oh, okay, we just have to be here. This is where we're at. And so I think that kind of language can be used in different ways for different purposes. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we will see what both of us think by the time we've finished our books. We already kind of have an idea how we feel about these books. So
yeah, what is your prediction for how you're going to rate this book at the end?
honestly, I could see myself rating it 5 stars.
Oh, okay.
Probably 4. Because I don't know a lot of what's happening yet.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of hard times from a lot of siblings and a lot of parents, but I haven't seen what it's building to yet.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure, like I'm guessing it's building to some like reunification of the family,
Okay.
or at least like closure for various family members, because they're all very disjointed at the moment. I don't know, depending on how it goes. It could be 4 or 5 stars.
Okay. I think I'm probably going to rate this one a 2, which on my personal scale means I didn't like it, but I can see why other people would.
Yeah.
And I think I've already explained. I don't know, I just don't see what the last 50% of it could possibly do for me to make me feel that different about it.
All right.
That's my unknown secret.
Okay, we finished our books.
I need to hear about your book.
Yes, I'm so
urgent.
excited. Yes.
Yeah.
I very much enjoyed it. It's not the kind of book that like has like this super powerful gripping plot that you're like, you know, like it is definitely still just telling you about people, but it does like withhold the little tidbits until the end in just the right pacing for me.
We love a reveal.
And so, yeah, it was very good.
How did you feel about the ending?
The ending was good, actually. So various members of his family that are dead are ghost narrators, but not all of them. And you find out why at the end, which is kind of fun.
Ooh, okay. I do love learning about ghosts.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't learn why they become ghosts, though. It's kind of fun. His dad is one of the ghosts, and he's like, I don't know why I'm a ghost.
Oh.
I don't know why I stuck around.
So not all people who died are ghosts?
That's a great question. The dad ghost does not know if there are other ghosts. He cannot see the other ghosts.
Ghosts cannot interact. That's lonely.
Ghosts don't know anything. Yes, yeah, he's just a memory ghost floating around. And so he cannot interact with the other ghosts that may or may not exist.
There's no ghost club.
No ghost club.
That's sad.
He was involved in a club when he was alive, though. So it's okay.
I don't think so, but okay.
Everyone in his club are also dead. It's okay, that's not a reveal. You don't find out about the club until you know they're already dead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was really good. The characters, they're complex. I'm not really sure if you could say that they develop because you see childhood and adulthood and they develop between the two, but you're in both the whole time. So it's very much just getting to know people and not so, well, you do watch the main character kind of have some growth moments more than just be an adult.
Oh, okay.
It's just really pleasant. I don't even know how to explain it. I feel like I'm explaining it really poorly.
Was it sad?
It was sad.
Okay.
It was more sad In the first half, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah, in the first half, it kind of explains just like how everyone's lives are not perfect, and you like are kind of in the weeds of the sadness with each person.
Okay.
But then by the end, you're kind of like watching them like either be okay with things or just like kind of reconnect as a family. And so it's not quite as sad.
Yeah. Do we find out more about the murder?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that was very full.
Okay. Very satisfying.
Yes, very satisfying.
We understand.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's not much more to say about it than that.
Oh, okay. What would you rate it?
Oh, it's going 5.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's a 5-star?
I think it might be a 5-star in comparison to the last book that I read. Who knows?
Okay.
I do feel that my rating system can sometimes be impressed by previous books and influenced by the quality of the books that I read around it. But it was really good. I had a lot of fun with it. I felt like its exploration of Taiwanese culture and like ghost culture and just like the growth of this small town and the ways that it did grow and didn't grow and the way that the people kind of developed with the society and the ways that they didn't. It was all very full and a very like very colorful experience, I think.
Oh, okay.
And I learned quite a bit about Taiwanese politics.
Ooh.
Yeah. Very interesting things going on. And there was a translator note at the end, too, explaining why he used, like, the names that he did that I thought were very odd.
Oh, yes. Didn't you say that all of his siblings' names were weird?
Yeah, like, I don't even remember any of them. I think there was, like, a Belinda, maybe Beatrice, who knows? I don't remember.
Just a bunch of B names?
Yeah,
That all the
like,
same
all
first
B names
letter?
that were, like, really dramatic and, like, you would never hear. And I was like, why are they giving them English names? Are these their English names and they're just referring to them? What's the situation here? One of them was Barbie. But at the end, the translator explained that he used those names to kind of signify the sharing of characters between siblings that happens in Chinese.
I mean, I guess.
And I think it was a weird choice, but, you know, it's the choice he made. So it's the choice we're left with. And the brothers were named Keith and Heath, which was also an interesting way to signify that like syllable sharing.
Okay. All right.
But, you know, I think it achieved what he wanted it to achieve.
Yeah.
It was just unusual.
Do you think it would have been better if he had just, like,
Romanized
the
names?
actual Chinese names? Or do you think that would have been more difficult to a foreign audience? Do you think he was, like,
It would have
really,
been better for me.
for you, the Chinese speaker?
Yes. But I don't know that it would have been better. Here's the deal. It was hard for me as it was because I could not keep any of the names straight. So I never knew what sister he was talking about until they gave me more details about their life.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, it's that sister, right? Okay. And I think a foreign audience would have felt that way no matter which way it was.
Okay.
Like, I had that problem because of the English names were too similar, but I might not have had that problem if they were Chinese names, but a foreign audience would have felt that way either way.
Okay.
And so it just is what it is.
Yeah. Because Notes of a Crocodile did not give all of the characters English names.
No, and that was really nice.
I did appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just think it's weird when they're in a foreign country and have English names. That's jarring to me. And
Yeah.
I don't speak Chinese.
Yeah, like the dad's name was Cliff.
They're really...
I was like, I could not see someone getting an English name of Cliff in Taiwan.
It's a very, like, obscure old person. Obscure, rich
The
old
translator
person
said
name.
he used it because the character for Mountain was in the dad's name, which is a choice you can make.
I guess.
I wouldn't have made that choice. The mom's name was Cicada, though, and I would have liked that much more. Just give them the names of the meanings of the characters.
They have, like, Keith and Heath and Cliff and Barbie and Belinda and Beatrice and Cicada?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
the naming in this was a little frustrating.
Yeah.
But I know what they were trying to do with the naming. They were trying to preserve the feeling of the names. I don't think it did that.
Yeah, I agree. Like, if that's the case, why didn't he just name everyone Cicada and Mountain and River and Breeze and
Yeah.
and Longevity
Strength. And, yeah, well, one of the daughters' names was Plenty.
Okay. I don't understand this translator's choices, but I guess we must respect him because the book is published.
So, and he did a really good job with the language.
Okay. Okay.
The names were a weird choice, but the language preserved a lot of what I assume was in the Chinese of like the poetry and the feeling and stuff.
All right. Yeah.
I thought it was really well written
Yeah.
and therefore really well translated as well.
Okay. I think that translation is such an important aspect of literature that is not discussed very often, even though it really impacts like how the book ends up and how other audiences perceive it.
Yeah. Translators have to be really good writers as well as translators because they have to be able to feel the emotion and then convey it and feel the poetry and then convey it.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to be a poet to translate.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
How beautiful.
So big
Yay.
thumbs up.
Now
for
I need to read
translators.
Ghost Town. I also finished my book.
Yes. Tell me everything.
I don't have a lot of new thoughts. I did give it 2 stars. However, I will say, I think that, but that's just me personally. I don't think a lot of people will love this book. However, I do fully recognize the artistry that went into this book and how it's very complex and detailed in all the different folktales and language and references that it has. And I think that the author is very talented. I just didn't love the content of the story. It was gross till the end. I would like to clarify something in my last update about the book, which is that when the grandmother has her like poetic thing that I read and then says, "I am shitting my pants."
Yes.
We did giggle a little bit.
We did.
Mainly because it was abrupt and therefore felt kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I would like to acknowledge that the grandmother in her letters references her sphincter and how difficult it is being because she had a previous bodily injury that now makes her kind of incontinent.
Yeah.
So I do acknowledge that that is not a giggleable thing. That is very serious. However, I do think that suddenly saying I am shitting my pants does not really convey like the tragedy of that situation, that she is having these difficulties in her old age due to an injury, and is kind of a juvenile way to me of expressing that. I don't know. It was just too much sudden, bizarre shock value to actually, like, I had to go back and be like, oh, wait, like, she sustained an injury that was, like, traumatic that now has affected her in her old age. Like, okay, I get that.
Yeah.
But just constantly referring to bodily functions in that way, I just thought was ineffective to me.
Yeah, like, you were complaining about it such that, you know, it kind of made the whole book feel juvenile, which I feel like kind of undoes a lot of the point.
Yeah, and I think that's difficult. I read on Goodreads, the author has like a review of the book that is actually just like an excerpt from like an interview she did about it, which talks about how she really wanted to put humor and playfulness into the book. She like really references the humor and playfulness that she tried to put into this book. Nowhere in the interview does she mention like the language in this book is revolting and will gross people out. She just references like playfulness and humor. And I think that perhaps she missed the mark on that.
Interesting. Yeah, so she was attempting to make people laugh.
Yeah, and I was just kind of ill for most of the time. It was just like, it was so gross that like I couldn't eat around the time that I was reading the book. And then, not to be, okay, like, I hate feeling like a hater, because I do generally feel like this is, like, a very poetic author who's, like, a good writer. She just, for some reason, she just made these choices. I also read that review that I had you read.
Yes.
That was all about
really good review.
how, like, talking about consuming and excreting things is part of, like, the cycle of life. And...
Well, and he was referencing the small group of indigenous people in the region and like their traditions.
Yes.
And their mythology. And I think at some point was definitely talking about how like that cycle of life was very like a very common literature trope for that.
Yes, for that
story trope.
Yeah, story like in their mythology. And so excretion and consumption was a big part of their culture. I just think that it could have been expressed in a more accessible way.
Yeah.
But also, I'm not the author. I think that the author accomplished exactly what she set out to do, and all the power to her for that. I think she's very talented. I just didn't like it. I would also like to mention, like, it's very poetic. She, like, the whole thing, it's like thick
poetry style writing. And I also thought that sometimes the prose was just a little purple for me.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that I should read these. I'm not just trying to take up this whole channel with readings that I'm doing. She told me to read these, okay? You told me to.
I did.
You told me I should read these. And so these are just a couple of excerpts that I was like, that just kind of made me exhausted. I'm like, really? Do we have to talk like this all the time? So they have an aunt who has a stroke. And they take her to the hospital, and it says, she was discharged early, given a warning. No high-stress activities, no sodium. When the doctor asked if we had a history of heart disease, my mother said no, we have no history, just stories, just a long record of surviving our countries. Like, man, like, is there heart disease in your family or not? Like the doctor's trying to help you. Like, I just... Like,
Very unhelpful.
Like, sure, okay, like, I guess so. And so that's just kind of exhausting to me of like, the whole book is like this. But especially when it comes to these kind of like mundane tasks, like, does it have to be like this all the time? Like really?
Like, it's a really poetic way to express a concept in a really weird location.
Yeah, and I just don't see it. And then there was another one. Okay, So this one. Second summer in Arkansas, we try renewing our papers. We go all the way to Little Rock, where the governor lives in a house so big it doesn't fit in our bus window when we pass it. At the immigration office, they ask for name, birth date, country of origin. Ma doesn't know her birth date or ours. She only knows the weather on the days we were born. Jie and I are rain. Ma answers rain, rain, rain to all three questions. She doesn't know when the day was, so she describes it. The day I was born, it was raining red snakes. The day I was born, 3 other people were born. Ma explains that there is only one day, and it lives like a body, getting up before us and falling asleep when we do, putting on the sky like a skirt. There aren't many, or if there are, it's the same day dressed as different countries. And like, that's beautiful.
It is.
But also, how did she get to America if she doesn't know her birth date? Like, how did she fill out the paperwork to get to America if she doesn't know her birth date? I don't know if the daughters were born in Taiwan or born in America, but if they were born in Taiwan, they also would have had to put their birth dates on some paperwork in order to immigrate. And if they were born in America, they would have birth certificates. So what's going on? What?
Rain, rain, rain.
Rain, rain, rain. I don't know. What? Like, yes, that's very, very pretty. But like, this is nonsense.
Yeah, like it's totally possible that she doesn't know the days that they were born, but she would have had to pick a date already.
She would have had to have a date. Like, just do your paperwork, ma'am. Like, it just makes me feel like to the question of like, may I take your order? She'd be like, take. Everything that I own has already been taken from me. Order, there is no order in the chaos that is this world. I'd be like, ma'am, this is a Wendy's. Like, I just feel like it's like, you just got to get some stuff done sometimes, you know? So sometimes that just got to be a bit much for me.
Yeah, misplaced poetry.
Yes, like, I love some good purple prose, but sometimes it goes too far for me, and those were types of instances those weren't the only ones, trust me. But like, those are the kinds of
Those are the ones
instances
I ordered her to read on the
that are
channel.
just like, this is ridiculous. This is too much. So I do think potentially, especially the review that I read that was analyzing the language and like the origins of like the different myths from this indigenous tribe was really interesting. I think that you would like this book if previously I had said you love disgusting women, like, who are allowed to be that, because, you know, sometimes that's empowering of like, women can be their human excreting selves, and we can find poetry in that, and that's great. If you're into that, read this book, you'll love it. And then also, I think if you know Chinese and you know a lot about Taiwan, and perhaps even quite academic or scholarly about that, it could be a fun puzzle to kind of piece together the different linguistic things, like in wordplay and folktales and myths and things, and that could be cool for you.
Yeah.
I do not meet any of those requirements that I just described for why you might like this book, so therefore I did not like it. But I don't think that means that the book is without merit or that the author is not good at what she does.
Yeah. Also, the reviewer who left a really good review and was like making all these connections with the small indigenous culture near where the book was written, she knows a lot.
Yeah, she said, like, she sounded very deeply, like, she, like, went deep into analyzing, like, the linguistics of this book.
And she knows a lot about, like, this specific small indigenous culture as well. And
which I think is really impressive.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And I would love to know as much as her and to be able to, like, piece all of this together in the way that she did. But, you know, living in Taiwan for like about 2 years of my life did not qualify me to understand any of that stuff because I did not spend time learning about specific indigenous tribe culture. So you probably won't pick up on things unless you know a lot of culture.
Yes.
But you could read the review and then read the book and then know things about the culture.
Whatever
perhaps.
you want to do.
Who
Or
knows?
you could just read
Options
the
are
review and be like,
available.
that's interesting.
Yes.
But yeah, this was Xinju Chen.
Yeah.
So it's like the second review on the book on Goodreads.
It's the one that starts with all the content warnings.
Yep. So thank you, Chen Xinju, for being so helpful in my understanding of this.
So those are the books we read.
All
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I
3
had a great
books.
time.
We read 1 book together, 2 books separately, chatting about them. I hope you had fun watching us. We've enjoyed talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let us know if we should do this sort of thing again in the future. Obviously, we live multiple continents apart right now,
A few of them, yeah.
but that may change. And
I
or
mean, it will
trips
eventually.
can happen. Yes, it will.
I am moving back, so.
But if you want Emma to be a regular guest on the channel, I want that too. So tell her.
Follow me on Goodreads. It's in the description.
Yes, it will be. Have a wonderful day. Treat people with respect. And pick up a book.
It looked like this. Will they be able to see if I
You gotta
show
go
it to them?
up way close. I can just put it on the screen.
Look at it. Oh my god, that's the one that I'm reading.
So I'll be talking to you about this book, and I'll be talking to
The
those
little
guys.
people in the lens.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Wow, this light is actually shit.